For decades, we believed summer would never end.
But while we slept,
the enemy was planting.
But God always keeps a remnant.
History does not always end with a bang.
Sometimes it ends with something far more dangerous. A long, comfortable sleep.
we lived through a long summer of prosperity.
A season where freedom felt permanent. Our nation was built on foundations many have forgotten. A constitution carved from the bedrock of biblical truth. But while we slept,
The watchman fell silent. And the fence was breached.
and we are not saved. Jeremiah 8:20.
The warmth of liberty is fading.
A colder season is coming.
Jesus warned us. The enemy came while men slept. The seeds were planted slowly.
It did not begin with sirens. It began in quiet hallways, where truth was slowly replaced.
Definitions were rewritten until words no longer meant what they once did.
The battle for the future was never only in parliaments. It was in the eyes of children. What was planted in the curriculum began to root in the imagination.
Confusion was marketed as compassion, and rebellion was celebrated as courage.
In courts, ancient boundaries were moved, one decision at a time. The symbols of a nation were not attacked first by armies, but by contempt. Dishonor spread faster than fire, and gratitude became a forgotten language. The word was not always rejected loudly. Often, it was simply neglected. Local decisions became national consequences because watchfulness had become rare.
Parents guarded front doors, while unguarded windows poured ideology into the home.
What appeared isolated was in fact coordinated. What seemed random had a pattern.
The noise grew louder, not to reveal the truth, but to bury it.
From a distance, the field still looked healthy. Up close, it was being strangled. The innocent questions of children were treated as obstacles when they interrupted the approved script.
Faith was pushed out of the public square and pressured to survive only in private.
Mockery became a language of power, and shame became a weapon of control. The war was no longer merely around us. It had entered the conscience.
When identity is severed from the Creator, confusion fills the vacuum.
The family table remained, but communion was disappearing.
The buildings still stood, but attendance is not the same as awakening.
The enemy understands the pulpit. Silence there becomes surrender everywhere.
The word had not lost its power. We had lost our readiness to proclaim it. A fire spreads when no one answers the alarm.
A shield means little if no one still has the courage to lift it.
The cost of speaking rose higher, and many decided silence was cheaper.
The attempt was never merely to debate the truth, but to bind it.
When righteousness is called extremism, captivity is never far behind. A society can be brilliantly literate and spiritually blind.
A fortress does not fall only when it is attacked from without, but when it is hollowed from within.
The cracks did not appear overnight. They spread quietly, under pressure we refused to name. The voice of memory grew faint beneath the machinery of constant distraction. Fear became a daily liturgy, rehearsed in living rooms across the nation. The stronghold under siege was not only the nation, it was the household.
Every serious battle eventually reveals what is truly at stake.
In hidden places, some shepherd still trembled before God more than he feared man.
The war against truth always intensifies before a faithful proclamation. Not every soul had surrendered to the darkness. Some were still standing at the threshold.
The next generation would not be discipled by accident. Someone must stand in the gap. This is the story of David and Goliath, showing how even the smallest bravery can shine the brightest. Revival never begins in crowds. It begins in hidden obedience.
To hear the voice of God again, some noise must first be silenced.
The remnant is rarely loud at first. It gathers like coals. In an age of fragmentation, covenant becomes resistance. Awakening that never reaches the street remains incomplete.
The spiritual battle is won first by what rules the inner walls. There are watchmen in places the world has forgotten to notice.
The remnant is not confined to sanctuaries. It lives in workshops, buses, kitchens, and fields. To remember rightly is itself a form of defiance. Is learned to slilsel, not as an idol, not as a slogan, but as a testimony that surrender is not inevitable.
Excuse me, would you like to take one of these?
Thank you.
Light does not negotiate with darkness. It enters.
Repentance is where resistance becomes holy.
Night has not ended, but darkness no longer reigns unchallenged. The fortress can still stand if the remnant will rise. The deception deepened when darkness stopped hiding and began presenting itself as light. The lie matured when appearance became more important than substance.
Truth was not always denied directly. Often it was buried beneath an avalanche of confusion.
The sacred was not always torn down. It was simply made peripheral.
The church felt the pressure. Some trembled in compromise. Some burned quietly with conviction.
Every faithful warning begins where the word is still feared more than man. The danger was not merely persecution. It was dilution.
In an age of spectacle, simple devotion began to look radical. Truth still appeared, but only for a moment before the flood swallowed it. In an age of spectacle, simple devotion began to look radical. Truth still appeared, but only for a moment before the flood swallowed it.
Truth still appeared, but only for a moment before the flood swallowed it.
The path forward was not absent. It was simply costly.
The battle for truth is always personal before it becomes public.
Resistance began in small acts. What to keep, what to reject, what no longer deserves your mind. Where repentance enters a house, deception begins to lose territory.
And then, in some places, fear finally met obedience and lost.
Conviction does what entertainment never can. It reaches the heart and demands a response. The hour was no longer theoretical. The warning had begun to sound. Watchmen are not those who create fear. They are those who refuse denial. Time was not slowing down for our hesitation.
The faithful response was becoming clearer.
Before any public stand, there must be private surrender. God often prepares resistance in the language of repentance. The last hour demands more than agreement. It demands awakening. The timid whisper was becoming a clear and living witness.
Not spectacle, not rage. Steady light in public places.
The truth had to be spoken again, displayed again, lived again. Revival enters nations through households willing to reorder their loves.
The future belongs to what is taught faithfully, while hearts are still tender.
The remnant was never meant merely to survive. It was meant to shine. Where repentance becomes shared, courage multiplies.
Wake up!
The
Be vigilant.
Stand.
Repente.
This is not the hour for spectators.
Guard the heart of your home. Teach truth before the world teaches confusion.
Do not retreat into fear. Carry the light.
And messages like this must keep reaching the world. And messages like this must keep reaching the world.
This is not just a film. It is a warning and a call.
As in Prepusher.
If this message stirred your heart, help us carry it further.
Your support helps us produce truth-filled programs, films, discipleship content, and messages of hope.
Together, we can keep proclaiming the gospel with clarity, beauty, and boldness.
Stand with us. Pray with us. Support this mission.
Your support keeps ABN running. Please consider a donation today using the information on your screen.
The call is no longer distant. It is here. Open the doors. Lift the word. Do not surrender what must still be stewarded. Protect the future by shaping it now.
The watchman is awake. The night is real, but it is not eternal.
The harvest is not only a warning, it is also a responsibility. The remnant is not a crowd of the famous, it is the faithful.
In the pulpit, in the home, in the street, in the classroom, through every faithful heart, return to the commandments of God.
We are called to spread this good news to every corner of the earth, without fear.
Stand in the gap. Defend the faith. Protect the future.
Be vigilant. Be sober. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion. And your 1 Peter 5:8.
The rest depends on those who are awake.